So my wife dropped a bomb on me during our anniversary dinner. 15 years of marriage, and she tells me she's going back to her ex. Says she never actually loved me. Just like that, between bites of grilled fish at this fancy restaurant I'd reserved weeks in advance. Her name's Veronica. We'd been together since our mid-20s, built what I thought was a solid life. I'm Elliot, by the way. I work in financial auditing, or at least I did before I retired early. The boring guy who reads contracts for fun and keeps spreadsheets organized. That's me. When she said it, I didn't cry or yell. I just looked at her, nodded, and told her she should leave then. The lack of drama seemed to throw her off. She wanted a scene, something she could weaponize later, tell her friends about how I lost it. But I gave her nothing except silence. The next day, her own attorney called me. His voice was shaking. He asked what I'd told Natasha at dinner because apparently she'd come into his office acting like this would be a straightforward 50-50 split. Poor guy had no idea what he was walking into. Let me back up. 7 years ago, I started noticing things. Little inconsistencies. Veronica would be on her phone constantly, smiling at messages she'd quickly hide. She'd mention this guy from her past, Damien, more often than seemed normal. She'd get defensive when I asked innocent questions. I'm not stupid, just patient. So I did what any rational person in my position would do. I built a fortress. I consulted with attorneys, set up trusts, created holding companies. Everything legal, everything documented. I had Veronica sign a post-nuptial agreement during what she thought was routine estate planning. She barely glanced at it, too busy scrolling through Instagram to care about the fine print. The agreement had triggers, specific clauses that would activate if certain conditions were met. Abandonment, premeditated deception, emotional fraud, all defined in excruciating legal detail. And all signed by both of us, notarized, witnessed, and filed away in a secure location. I remember the exact moment I knew something was off. It was a Tuesday evening, nothing special. Veronica was on the couch, laughing at something on her phone. When I walked by, she quickly switched apps. Not suspicious on its own, but it was the third time that week, the fourth time that month. The pattern was forming. Most people would have confronted her right then, demanded to see the phone, started a fight, made accusations. But that's not how I operate. I'm a financial auditor. My entire career was built on finding discrepancies, following trails, and documenting evidence. So that's what I did. I started keeping notes. Not in some creepy stalker way, just observations. Times she said she'd be one place, but her location showed another. Expenses on our credit card that didn't match her stories. Phone calls she'd take in the other room. Little things that individually meant nothing, but together painted a picture. 3 months into my observations, I hired a private investigator. Not to catch her in the act, but to confirm what I already suspected. He came back with photos of her meeting Damien at coffee shops, restaurants, even a hotel once. They weren't just reconnecting as old friends. This was a full-blown affair. But here's where I differed from most people in my situation. I didn't confront her. I didn't file for divorce. I didn't even let on that I knew. Instead, I started building. I met with 3 different attorneys before I found the right one. Her name was Patricia, and she specialized in asset protection. She'd seen cases like mine before, situations where one spouse was clearly planning an exit strategy while the other was left vulnerable. She asked me one question that changed everything. Do you want to be fair or do you want to be protected? I chose protection. We spent 6 months crafting the post-nuptial agreement. Every clause was carefully worded, every trigger precisely defined. We created scenarios, anticipated arguments, closed loopholes. It was a work of art, really. A legal document that looked like standard estate planning, but functioned as a fortress. The genius of it was in the presentation. I didn't sit Veronica down and say, "Hey, I think you're cheating, sign this." I framed it as responsible financial planning. We were getting older, I said. We needed to protect Piper's inheritance. Make sure everything was organized, and in case something happened to one of us. Veronica barely looked at it. She was too busy texting Damien, planning their future, to care about the present. She signed every page, initialed every clause, even joked about how paranoid I was. The notary witnessed it all. Patricia filed it away. And just like that, I'd built the framework for my own protection. But I didn't stop there. I started restructuring our assets. The house got transferred to a holding company I'd created. The investment accounts got moved into a trust with specific beneficiary rules. Even the cars got reclassified under corporate ownership. Everything legal, everything documented, everything designed to activate the moment certain conditions were met. Veronica never noticed. She was too focused on her exit plan to see that I was building one too. The affair with Damien continued for another 4 years. 4 years of her sneaking around, lying to my face, planning her escape. 4 years of me documenting everything, strengthening my position, preparing for the inevitable. You might wonder why I stayed, why I didn't just leave when I first found out. The answer is simple. Emotion makes you vulnerable. Anger makes you sloppy. I needed to be neither. I needed to be strategic. Besides, I wasn't unhappy. I had my work, my hobbies, my daughter. Veronica's betrayal hurt, sure, but it also clarified things. It showed me who she really was. And once you see someone clearly, they lose their power over you. The anniversary dinner was her idea. She'd been acting strange for weeks, nervous but excited. I knew something was coming. I just didn't know what. When she dropped the bomb about leaving me for Damien, about never loving me, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she'd just activated every single clause I'd spent years putting in place. She thought she was delivering a devastating blow. She was actually handing me the keys to the kingdom. When Veronica walked out that night after dinner, dragging her suitcase like she was the star of some empowerment movie, she had no clue what she'd just activated. I went to my office, pulled out a black box I hadn't touched in years, and executed the protocols I'd set up. One click. That's all it took. The house transferred to a holding company under my name. The brokerage accounts reassigned their beneficiaries. Her car, the one I'd bought her for her birthday, got reclassified as a corporate fleet asset. Every single thing she thought was ours had always been mine, just wrapped in prettier packaging. I'm not a monster, though. I left her the Netflix password. The next morning, I woke up to a notification from a social media monitoring tool I'd set up years ago. Veronica had posted a photo with Damien. They were holding champagne glasses, grinning like idiots, with a caption about true love finding its way back. The timestamp showed it was taken 3 hours before our anniversary dinner, before she'd even told me she was leaving, before the fake tears and the rehearsed speech. That photo was a legal landmine. The post-nup had a clause about premeditated abandonment. If evidence emerged proving she'd planned to leave before informing me, and that plan involved another romantic relationship, she'd forfeit all rights to community property. The timestamp on that selfie was basically her signature on a confession. I downloaded the metadata, confirmed the GPS coordinates, the time zone, everything. Then I forwarded it to my attorney with a subject line that just said clause activation. He'd understand. Around noon, I got a call from Tyler, Veronica's lawyer. Young guy, probably fresh out of law school, full of confidence. He started talking about equitable division, her fair share, avoiding unnecessary drama. I let him finish his speech, then I sent him an email. No text in the body, just attachments. The post-nup, the trust structure, the clause activation logs, the time-stamped social media evidence. The line went silent. 6 minutes later, he called back. His voice had completely changed. He sounded like someone who'd just realized he'd stepped on a landmine. He asked what Veronica had told me at dinner, and I simply said, "She told me the truth." Then I hung up. Veronica tried to access our bank accounts the next day, walked into the branch like she owned the place, demanded to withdraw from our joint savings. The teller couldn't find her name on the account. The branch manager, Thomas, had to pull her into a private office and show her the documents. Her name had been removed, triggered by the abandonment clause. She'd signed the authorization herself 6 years ago, though she'd clearly forgotten about it. She tried to argue, threatened to sue, made a scene, but Thomas just showed her signature on the paperwork. She'd even joked with the notary about how ridiculous all the legal stuff was. Now that joke was costing her everything. Then she found out about the apartment, the place where she'd been staying with Damien, the one she thought was their fresh start. Turns out, I owned the building through one of my holding companies. She came home to find an eviction notice taped to the door. 48 hours to vacate, signed by the asset manager, which was me. Damien freaked out when he realized his lease was with a property owned by his girlfriend's husband. He'd signed documents acknowledging he had consent from the holder of joint marital assets. Except Veronica never had the right to give that consent because she never owned the asset, which meant Damien had participated in fraud, even if he didn't know it. I filed a civil lawsuit against him for tortious interference and unjust enrichment, not because I wanted his money, but because I wanted to make a point. You don't get to steal another man's wife and assume you can also steal his property without consequences. Our daughter, Piper, called me around midnight a few days later. She's 22, smart, studying finance at university. She said Veronica had been calling her, crying, saying I'd ruined her life. Piper asked if it was true that I'd been planning this for years. I told her to check the documents I'd put in her Dropbox 3 years ago. The full post-nup with annotations explaining every clause. Then I told her to look at her mother's phone, specifically the messages with Damien from August onward. Piper went quiet. The call ended without a goodbye. The next morning, I got an email from her university account. No subject line, no message, just screenshots of Veronica's texts with Damien. Messages about how tired she was of pretending, how she couldn't wait to be free, how she thought she could manipulate me into signing a revised agreement if she caught me when I was tired. There was even a message about how, if I died, everything would go to Piper, and Veronica assumed Piper would share with her anyway. Piper didn't respond to Veronica's calls after that, changed her voicemail greeting from Piper to P. Whitman. Formal, distant, final. The fact that Veronica had written about using Piper's inheritance as a way to access money after I died was particularly damaging. Piper was horrified. She'd thought her mother loved her unconditionally. Finding out she was viewed as a financial asset was devastating. But Piper's strong. She processed it, worked through it, and came out the other side with clearer boundaries and better judgment. If anything, this whole situation taught her valuable lessons about trust, contracts, and self-protection. Veronica requested a meeting, said I owed her a face-to-face conversation. I agreed because I knew what she really wanted was an audience for her performance. We met in a conference room downtown. She showed up late wearing sunglasses and that jacket she always wore when she wanted to look powerful. But I could see the panic underneath. I slid a folder across the table. Inside was everything. The social media post with timestamps, the text message transcripts, audio of a phone call where she'd told her friend Michelle that she was going to make him think I'm still undecided just long enough to cash out. Turns out Michelle had recorded that conversation. Betrayal doesn't come with loyalty programs. Veronica's hands shook as she read through the documents. She tried to argue that I'd hidden everything from her, that this wasn't fair. I told her she'd never looked, too busy focusing on what she thought she deserved to notice what was actually protected. She asked if I thought this made me strong. I said no, it made me free. She stood up, knocked her chair back, said she hoped I was proud of myself. I nodded, I was. She left without another word. No performance, no tears, just the sound of her heels clicking down the hallway. The meeting with Veronica in the conference room was closure for both of us. She needed to see the evidence laid out, needed to understand how thoroughly she'd been outmaneuvered. I needed to look her in the eye one last time and confirm that I felt nothing. No love, no hate, just indifference. A week later, she received the final documents. Notification of irrevocable dissolution. Every claim she had, nullified. Not through the court system, but through the private trust we'd both signed. I'd built the ending into the beginning. Damien moved out shortly after the lawsuit notice arrived. Went back to his ex-wife, where at least the drama came with shared custody and familiar territory. Michelle stopped answering Veronica's calls. Piper maintained her distance. He settled quickly, paid a nominal amount, and signed an NDA. I think the whole experience scared him straight. Last I heard, he went back to his ex-wife and stopped dating entirely. Veronica ended up in a tiny apartment, alone, staring at the paperwork that had dismantled her entire plan. She'd spent years thinking I was just a footnote in her story. She didn't realize I was the editor, and now there were no more pages left to turn. Her lawyer, Tyler, actually apologized to me during one of our calls, said he'd never seen a case so thoroughly documented, asked if I'd been planning this as from the beginning. I told him no, just from the moment I realized my wife was planning to betray me. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Veronica struggled for a while, lost weight, looked tired, seemed defeated. Part of me felt bad about that, but a larger part remembered the 4 years of lies, the anniversary dinner ambush, the smug photo with Damien. She'd made her choices. These were the consequences. Eventually, she stabilized, found a job, made new friends, started rebuilding. I was glad. I never wanted to destroy her, just protect myself. The fact that her own actions led to her downfall wasn't my responsibility. People ask me if I feel guilty, if I think I went too far. But here's the thing. I didn't destroy Veronica's life. She did that herself the moment she decided to betray someone who'd spent 15 years protecting her, providing for her, and loving her, in the only way I knew how. I just made sure that when she walked away with exactly what she'd contributed. Nothing. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not hurt. I'm just done. And honestly, that's the best feeling I've had in years. The house is quiet now. No passive-aggressive sighs, no complaints disguised as observations, no constant demands for attention. Just peace. I make my coffee in the morning, read the paper, work on projects I actually care about. Piper visits on weekends. We talk about her classes, her future, normal things. Sometimes I think about what Veronica's doing now, whether she regrets it, whether she understands what she lost. But mostly, I don't think about her at all, because that's the real victory. Not the money, not the property, not even the satisfaction of watching her plans crumble. The real victory is indifference. She wanted to hurt me, to break me, to leave me devastated. Instead, she freed me. And I'll take that over revenge any day. As for me, life got better in ways I didn't expect. The peace was obvious, but there were other benefits too. I had more time for hobbies. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected during the marriage. I traveled, something Natasha had never been interested in. I rediscovered parts of myself that had been dormant for years. So yeah, that's my story. 15 years of marriage ended with a single sentence over grilled fish. But unlike Veronica, I was prepared. I'd done the work, read the contracts, built the safeguards. And when the moment came, I didn't panic or beg or fall apart. I just executed the plan. Some people might call me cold, calculating, ruthless, but I prefer to think of myself as thorough. I'm the guy who reads the fine print, who plans for contingencies, who understands that trust is earned and betrayal has consequences. Veronica thought she was playing chess while I was playing checkers. Turns out, I wasn't playing at all. I was building the board. And now the game is over. I've moved on with my life, started consulting again, helping other people protect their assets. Turns out there's a lot of demand for someone who understands how to build legal fortresses. I've helped 3 clients in the past 6 months alone, all of them dealing with similar situations. Spouses who thought they could walk away with half of everything without consequences. I don't do it for the money. I do it because I understand what it's like to be blindsided by someone you trusted. And I want to make sure other people have the tools to protect themselves. Piper graduated last month, top of her class. She's starting a job at a financial firm in the fall. She thanked me in her speech, said I'd taught her the importance of reading contracts and understanding the fine print. Veronica wasn't there. Piper didn't invite her. I'm proud of my daughter. She learned the right lessons from all of this. Not about revenge or bitterness, but about self-protection and boundaries. About understanding that love without respect is just manipulation with better marketing. As for Veronica, last I heard she was working retail and living with a roommate. Damien's lawsuit settled out of court. He paid a small amount and signed an NDA. I didn't need his money. I just needed him to understand that actions have consequences. Michelle apparently tried to reconnect with Veronica a few months ago, but Veronica told her to get lost. Guess she finally figured out who her real friends were. Or weren't. The funny thing is, I don't hate Veronica. I don't wish bad things on her. I just don't care. She's a stranger now, someone I used to know, someone who made choices that led her exactly where she is. That's not my responsibility anymore. I've started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee here and there, with interesting people. It's nice to have conversations with someone who actually listens, who asks questions, who seems genuinely interested in who I am rather than what I can provide. One woman asked me on our second date if I was worried about getting hurt again. I told her no, because now I know the warning signs. I know what to look for. And more importantly, I know my own worth. I'm not the same person I was when I married Veronica. That guy was naive, trusting, willing to overlook red flags because he wanted to believe in the fairy tale. This version of me is smarter, more cautious, but also more confident. I know what I bring to the table, and I'm not willing to settle for someone who doesn't appreciate it. Dating again was strange at first. I'd been with Veronica for so long, I'd forgotten what it was like to meet new people. But it was also exciting. Every conversation felt fresh. Every connection felt genuine because it wasn't built on lies. I'm seeing someone now. Her name's Lydia. She's a professor, teaches literature at the university. We met at a bookstore, both reaching for the same novel. Cliché, I know, but sometimes clichés happen for a reason. Lydia knows about Veronica. I told her everything on our third date. Figured if she was going to run, better to know early. But she didn't run. She listened, asked thoughtful questions, and then said something that stuck with me. You protected yourself without becoming bitter. That's rare. Maybe she's right. I don't feel bitter. I don't spend my days plotting revenge or hoping Natasha suffers. I just feel grateful that I had the foresight to protect myself and the discipline to execute the plan. Piper likes Lydia. They've had coffee a few times, talked about books and life. I'm not rushing anything, but it's nice to see my daughter approve. It's nice to have someone in my life who values honesty and communication. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd confronted Veronica when I first found out about the affair. If I'd yelled, demanded a divorce, split everything 50-50 in an emotional rage. I'd probably be in a much worse position now. Financially devastated and emotionally broken, legally vulnerable. Instead, I played the long game. I was patient, strategic, thorough. And when the moment came, I was ready. People ask if I regret the years I spent knowing about the affair but staying anyway. The answer is no. Those years weren't wasted. They were preparation. Every day I stayed was another day to strengthen my position, document her behavior, build my fortress. Besides, I wasn't miserable. I had good days, good moments. I focused on work, on Piper, on my own interests. Veronica's betrayal was happening in the background, but it wasn't consuming my life. The day the final documents were signed, I took myself out to dinner. Same restaurant where Veronica had dropped her bomb. I ordered the grilled fish, sat at a table by the window, and toasted to new beginnings. The waiter asked if I was celebrating something. I smiled and said yes, freedom. He didn't ask for details, just brought me a complimentary dessert and wished me well. That's the thing about endings. They're also beginnings. Veronica's betrayal ended our marriage, but it began my liberation. Her lies closed one chapter but opened another. I'm in that new chapter now. Writing my own story, making my own choices, living on my own terms. No more walking on eggshells. No more wondering if I'm being lied to. No more pretending everything's fine when it's not. Just honesty, clarity, and peace. Life is good now. Really good. I wake up every morning grateful for the peace, the clarity, the freedom. I don't have to walk on eggshells or manage someone else's emotions or wonder if I'm being lied to. I'm just living my life on my terms with people who actually value me. And honestly, that's worth more than any amount of money or property or revenge could ever be. So if you're reading this and you're in a similar situation, here's my advice. Protect yourself. Read the contracts. Build the safeguards. Don't assume that love means you're safe from betrayal. Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And if the worst happens, don't fall apart. Execute the plan. Because the best revenge isn't hurting them back. It's building a life so good that they become irrelevant. Trust me on that one. So yeah, that's the full story. 15 years of marriage, 4 years of knowing about the betrayal, 7 years of preparation, and one anniversary dinner that activated everything I'd built. Some people call me calculating. Others call me smart. I just call myself prepared. Because in the end, the best defense against betrayal isn't trust. It's documentation. And I had plenty of that. The whole thing started unraveling for Veronica faster than she could have imagined. See, when you build your escape plan on assumptions rather than facts, reality has a way of catching up with you. And reality, in this case, was a meticulously documented paper trail that stretched back 7 years. Veronica and I met at a corporate event. She was working in marketing, I was in auditing. She was charming, outgoing, the kind of person who lit up a room. I was quieter, more reserved. Opposites attract, right? The first year was great. We traveled, went to concerts, spent weekends exploring the city. She made me feel alive in ways I hadn't before. I made her feel stable, secure. It seemed like a perfect balance, but looking back, I can see how transactional it was. She liked what I provided, not who I was. The nice dinners, the financial security, the comfortable lifestyle. I was a means to an end, not the end itself. The cracks started showing around year 3. She'd make comments about how boring I was, how predictable, always framed as jokes, but jokes reveal truth. She'd compare me to her exes, especially Damien. Talk about how spontaneous he was, how exciting. I should have paid more attention to those comments. Should have recognized them as red flags. But I was in love. Or what I thought was love. I wanted to make it work. When Piper was born, things improved for a while. Veronica seemed happy, focused on being a mother. We had family routines, shared goals. I thought we'd turned a corner. But kids don't fix broken relationships. They just delay the inevitable. By the time Piper was in middle school, Veronica was restless again. She'd go out with friends more often, come home later. She started working out obsessively, buying new clothes, changing her appearance. Classic signs of someone preparing for something new. That's when Damien came back into the picture. He'd gotten divorced and moved back to the area. They reconnected on social media, started meeting for coffee to catch up. Innocent enough, or so she claimed. But I knew better. I'd seen this pattern before in my work. People don't just reconnect with exes out of nostalgia. They reconnect because something's missing in their current situation. So I started preparing. Not because I wanted the marriage to end, but because I needed to be ready if it did. The postnup was the foundation, but I built layers on top of it. I created multiple LLCs, each owning different assets. I set up trusts with specific triggers and conditions. I documented everything, every conversation, every financial transaction, every suspicious behavior. It sounds paranoid, I know. But paranoia is just preparation that hasn't been validated yet. And in my case, it was absolutely validated. The thing about Veronica's plan was how predictable it was. She thought she was being clever, strategic, but she was following a script I'd seen dozens of times in my professional life. The affair, the emotional distance, the sudden declaration, the assumption of a 50-50 split. She thought she was unique. She was actually a cliché, and clichés are easy to plan for. When she finally made her move at the anniversary dinner, I was almost relieved. The waiting was over. The uncertainty was gone. Now it was just execution. The first few days after she left were strange. The house felt different, quieter. I'd gotten so used to the tension, the unspoken conflict, that peace felt unfamiliar. But I adjusted quickly. Started cooking meals I actually liked instead of what she preferred. Watched shows I enjoyed instead of her reality TV garbage. Reorganized the house to suit my needs instead of her aesthetic. Small things, but they added up to a sense of ownership I hadn't felt in years. Piper noticed the change when she came home from university that first weekend. She said I seemed lighter, more relaxed. I told her I was just adjusting to the new normal. But she knew, kids always know. She asked me directly if I was okay with the divorce. I told her the truth. I was more than okay. I was liberated. She nodded, understanding in a way that surprised me. Later, she told me she'd known something was off with her mother for years. Had seen the way Natasha looked at her phone, the way she'd light up when certain messages came through. Piper had suspected the affair long before I confirmed it. That conversation was important. It established that we were on the same page, that I wasn't poisoning her against her mother. Piper had made her own observations and drawn her own conclusions. When Natasha tried to manipulate Piper later, it backfired because Piper already knew the truth. She wasn't some naive kid who could be swayed by tears and sufferer narratives. She was a smart young woman who valued honesty. The legal process moved faster than Veronica expected. She kept waiting for court dates, mediation sessions, negotiations. But there was nothing to negotiate. The postnup was ironclad. The trust structure was legal. The evidence was documented. Her lawyer tried a few Hail Mary arguments, claimed she'd signed under duress, claimed she didn't understand what she was agreeing to, claimed the terms were unconscionable. But every argument fell apart under scrutiny. The video evidence showed her joking and relaxed during the signing. The witnesses confirmed she'd asked questions and received answers. The terms were unusual but not illegal. Tyler eventually advised her to accept the situation and move on. There was no path to victory, no loophole to exploit. She'd signed away her rights voluntarily, and now she had to live with the consequences. I heard she fired him after that. Hired a second lawyer who promised to fight harder. That lawyer reviewed the case and came to the same conclusion. Then a third lawyer. Same result. Eventually, she ran out of money for legal fees and had to accept reality. The apartment she ended up in was a studio in a less desirable part of town. Nothing like the house we'd shared or the place she'd been staying with Damien. Just a basic unit with thin walls and outdated appliances. I know this because Piper visited her once, came back shaken. She said Veronica looked defeated, surrounded by boxes she hadn't unpacked, eating takeout on a folding chair. Part of me felt bad hearing that, but a larger part remembered the smug photo with Damien, the cruel words at dinner, the years of lies. She'd gambled everything on a fantasy and lost. That wasn't my fault. That was her choice. Damien's situation was almost worse. The lawsuit cost him more than money. His reputation took a hit. His ex-wife found out about the affair and used it against him in their custody arrangement. His employer, a conservative financial firm, quietly pushed him out after the scandal became public. Last I heard, he'd moved to another state, started over with a new job and a new identity, trying to escape the consequences of his actions. Good luck with that. As for Michelle, Veronica's supposed best friend, she disappeared the moment things got difficult. Turns out their friendship was built on gossip, not actual loyalty. I, on the other hand, found my real friends during this time. People who'd been in my life for years, but I'd neglected during the marriage. They showed up, offered support, listened without judgment. The dating world was interesting to navigate after so many years. Apps, algorithms, swipe culture, it was all new to me. But I approached it the same way I approach everything else, methodically. I created profiles on a few platforms, was honest about my situation, and started meeting people. Some dates were awkward, some were pleasant but lacked chemistry. A few were genuinely enjoyable. Lydia was different from the start. She asked real questions, listened to the answers, shared her own experiences openly. There was no game playing, no manipulation, just honest communication. Our first date lasted 4 hours. We talked about books, travel, life philosophies. She told me about her divorce 5 years ago, how she'd rebuilt her life afterward. I told her about Natasha, the affair, the legal battle. She didn't judge or offer platitudes. She just listened and understood. By the third date, I knew this was something worth pursuing. By the sixth, we were exclusive. By the 10th, I'd introduced her to Piper. It's been 8 months now. We're taking things slow, but it feels right. Stable without being boring, exciting without being chaotic. Everything my marriage to Veronica wasn't. Lydia knows about the post-nup, the trust structure, all of it. She thinks it's smart, not paranoid. Says she wishes she'd had similar protections during her divorce. We've talked about the future, about what we both want. Neither of us is in a rush to remarry, but we're open to the possibility eventually. For now, we're just enjoying the relationship without pressure or expectations. Piper approves, which matters to me. She and Lydia have developed their own friendship, independent of me. They text about books and movies, meet for coffee occasionally. It's nice to see. As for Veronica, I rarely think about her anymore. She's become a cautionary tale, a reminder of what happens when you prioritize fantasy over reality, and I heard through the grapevine that she's dating again. Some guy she met at work. I hope it works out for her. I genuinely do. Not because I care about her happiness, but because I want her to move on and leave me alone. The final piece of closure came about 6 months after the divorce was finalized. I was cleaning out the garage and found a box of old photos. Pictures from our wedding, vacations, holidays with Piper. I sat there for a while, looking through them, trying to remember what I'd felt in those moments. But the emotions were gone. I looked at those photos like I was looking at strangers. I didn't throw them away. I put them in a folder for Piper in case she ever wants them. But I didn't keep any for myself. That chapter was closed. I'm in a new chapter now. One where I'm valued, respected, and honest. One where I don't have to wonder if I'm being lied to or plan for betrayal. Just a normal, healthy relationship with someone who actually likes me for who I am. It's not dramatic or exciting. It's just good. And after years of drama and deception, good is exactly what I need. So that's where I am now. Living in the house I protected, dating someone I respect, maintaining a relationship with my daughter, and building a life that's actually mine. Natasha thought she was escaping to something better. She was actually walking away from the best thing she'd ever have, her loss, my gain. And I'm perfectly fine with that. The consulting work has been rewarding. Every client who comes to me with a similar story confirms that what I went through wasn't unique, and my response wasn't excessive. I've helped several people build their own protections, and watching them walk away from bad situations with their dignity and assets intact makes everything worthwhile. Lydia understands this better than anyone. She's been through her own version of betrayal. We talk about it sometimes, the scars we carry, the lessons we learned. She's teaching me to be vulnerable again, slowly, to trust without being naive. Piper's thriving in her new job. She calls me every Sunday, tells me about her week. She's become the kind of person I always hoped she'd be. Smart, independent, cautious, but not cynical. She hasn't spoken to Veronica in over a year. Not out of spite, but out of self-protection. Sometimes I wonder if Veronica understands what she lost. Not the money or the house, but the relationships. But understanding requires self-reflection and humility, things Veronica has never been good at. The house feels like mine now. I've redecorated, changed things to suit my taste. The living room is now a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Every room tells a new story now. Not our story, but my story. And that's exactly how it should be. Looking back on everything, I don't regret a single decision I made. All of it led me here. To this life, this peace, this version of myself that's stronger and wiser than the man who married Veronica 15 years ago. She thought she was breaking me when she told me she never loved me. But she was actually setting me free. And for that, in a strange way, I'm grateful. So yeah, that's my story. The betrayal, the preparation, the execution, the aftermath, and the rebuilding. It's not a fairy tale, but it's real. And it's mine.